Hello, freefromers, and welcome to episode 7 of the Allergy and Freefrom Show chat with me, Ben Corbett. I'm delighted to have two guests on the show this week for two very different conversations. Firstly, we have businessman, freefromer, and star of The Apprentice, Charles Burns, coming in to talk about his freefrom story and what led him to launch his Allergy app. And afterwards, we have Emily Hampton from Coeliac UK in the virtual studio to take your questions and mine. But before that, I just wanted to direct you to the ticket link in the video description below. After all that we've been through over the last few months, our autumn shows in London and Birmingham will be something truly special, so register now for your free tickets. Moving on now to this week's AFF Chat Champions, Alpro, nominated this week by Hillary through our Facebook page. Alpro have donated a large amount of stock and £200,000 of financial aid to independent cafes to help them through this difficult time. Nice one, Alpro, our AFF Chat Champions of the Week. Please send your nominations to info@f2fevents.co.uk or contact us on our social media channels. We want to know the brands, companies, and individuals that you feel have gone above and beyond during lockdown. So, on to today's first guest. I would like to invite into the virtual studio businessman, freefromer, and star of The Apprentice, Charles Burns.
Hi.
Hey, Charles, how you doing? Thanks so much for coming on today, mate.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No worries. So I'm a massive fan of The Apprentice. So I've been watching since the very beginning through all its different changes and stuff over the years. But for those of you that maybe haven't seen you on TV, would you like to just let people know who you are and a little bit about the work you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm probably most known in the UK from my time, as you mentioned, on The Apprentice back in 2017. I made it through 8 of 12 weeks of the show. Prior to that, I'm your real archetypal entrepreneur, the kid that sold sweets on the school bus, like all the way through to the guy that launched businesses, consult for businesses, and now the current incarnation is Allergy, spelled Allergy, which is the app we'll get on to talking about, I imagine, shortly.
Okay, no worries. So I guess it's a good place for me to ask, because I think that's what led you to what we're talking about today. Maybe even those that did see you on The Apprentice, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey since The Apprentice over the last couple of years?
Yeah, certainly. So it's been not without its ups and downs, marriage, divorce, all different life experiences happen, different things. And then what's then happened was kind of about February 2019, before that, maybe 2 years before that, I just noticed that, like, gut health wise, like I wasn't feeling great. I didn't know much about gut health or these diets or anything like that. Went to see a bunch of doctors, and eventually I wasn't happy with what I was being told, which is just, oh, it's nothing. I'm like, it's definitely something. Like, this isn't nothing. And eventually diagnosed with lactose intolerance. And then that kind of cleared things up to a point. And then the next thing that happened was I was still something's still not right. And even today, I'm still trying to iterate. And I think it never really stops, that journey, trying to figure out exactly what you should and shouldn't eat for your own benefit. And then I figured out that gluten, again, is something that I'm most likely intolerant to and should really avoid. And those two things, then when I would go and eat out, which was something I was doing a lot of that period of time last year, I just realized there was just no standardization across whether it was a takeaway or a very high-end restaurant or any eating establishment. And I was like, surely there's a better way of doing this. And that's where the idea for Allergy came about.
Cool. So you say you're still sort of figuring things out. So would you consider yourself still to be sort of at the beginning or during a journey to sort of understanding your body and what you should and shouldn't eat? Because I think there's going to be a lot of people watching that, you know, maybe haven't had an intolerance for 20 years or whatever, and maybe are taking their first steps on that journey. So it'd be interesting to know.
Yeah. So the thing is, like anything, I don't think you ever really stop learning and figuring out what it is. And I think one thing that's important is don't compare, same in a business sense, but also I suppose in a food nutrition sense. So don't compare your day one to someone else's middle or end, right? Like, just go with whatever feels right for you. And yeah, you can see doctors, nutrition, dietitians, but it starts with yourself. And you know, people know, like, you don't have to know much about nutrition to know that if you have a pizza and junk food and ice cream and all the rest of it, you feel a certain way. And if you have quote unquote healthy food, whatever that might be. I'm not going to define what that is, right? That's a whole toxic thing. But if you have healthier food, you know how you feel as well. And so what I found is since January, I was kind of I was in mental health hospital for some time, and I put on 20 kilograms, which is another conversation about how badly the food they provide you there is. And then I was like, right, I need to do something different. You know, I'd cut out the lactose and the gluten to a large extent, and I went down the plant-based route, and I've done that now pretty much since beginning of January. I've lost over about 2 stone, about 10% of my body weight, more than that even, and I've just gone about it very sensibly. So, you know, starting with the kind of quote unquote fake meat products, and then slowly transitioning more to what I would suggest for me is the best way, which is a whole foods plant-based diet. In other words, do I know, can I see the things I'm eating? Can I describe them rather than looking at a packet and going, I don't know what half these things are, and like whether they're good or bad for you. Like, I just don't understand what it is, and I don't want to eat and put something in my body that I don't understand. So I've kind of moved towards that, and I feel much healthier. I wake up at 5 a.m. I'm energetic throughout the day. Have no peaks and troughs of kind of like, you know, where you'd have sugar or you need this and need that. And for me, it's worked perfectly. I would not go and sit on a soapbox and say everyone in the world should be plant-based. I did a great interview on my YouTube show called Too Many Cooks. It's also on Spotify, etc., with a fellow called Mihai Niculescu, who's an expert in nutrigenetics. And if people that don't know what that is, they should really look into it because it's super interesting. It's effectively, rather than letting a government body or an institute say, here's the average calories and average sugar and average fat that everyone should have, it looks at your cells and goes, based on your cell and genetic makeup, here's exactly what you need to be eating, exactly what you need to be avoiding. Because the point he was making was like, you look at Eskimos, for example, right? They eat very little vegetables. All the vegetables they're eating is just what's in the gut of the animal that they're eating, and yet they're perfectly healthy. And so this whole debate that you have to eat a certain way and have to be plant-based and all the rest of it to be healthy is just null and void. There's loads of different diets, loads of different ways to eat healthily, and you have to figure out what works for you. And it's a whole try and error process. But like life is, you know, you just got to carry on and keep improving and keep iterating, and slowly but surely find a diet that works for you. But there's nobody in this world that should really say this is the diet that works for 7 billion people. It's a fallacy. So anyone that does say that, be very, very, you know, with the barge pole, stay away.
And I know that you're a really strong advocate of you know, good mental health and stuff like that. And have you noticed a difference in that sense with changing what you eat as well?
Yeah, huge difference. That's the thing. It's like I have a thing called the 4 Ps, which is passion, purpose, and perseverance equals progress, right? So that's in life in a general sense, right? But in terms of from a dietary perspective, yeah, for me personally, since the whole plant-based piece, and since I'm working with Allergy and something that I'm genuinely passionate about, that's genuinely social impact driven and mission driven. And the result may well be a huge financial gain, but that is certainly not the driver. And those that are close to the company, download the app on the App Store and the Android Store in a few weeks' time, they realize that. And that's why the reviews we're getting, the restaurateurs and diners are absolutely loving what we're doing. And yeah, I would say really for me, just for me, the whole plant-based piece has really made me from a mental clarity position. Like my focus is so, if I'm doing something, like that's what I'm doing, you know, and I'm super productive. And as I say, from 5 a.m. in the morning until I go to bed at 10 p.m. at night, like I'm good to go the whole time, and I'm alert, and I'm not lethargic and having to like sit down after a heavy meal and those type of things. But this is the key thing. I still fundamentally love food. I love eating. I love what I'm eating. I'm not eating boring foods. I'm still thoroughly enjoying mealtime. Like it's not I don't look at meals as like a medicine and like that's all it is. Of course, that's one element of it. But for me, like you have to enjoy it. And like when restaurants reopen, which they will do very soon, that's a big part of the global, you know, way of enjoying yourself. And you shouldn't kind of, and that's what I'm here to do with Allergy. It shouldn't be difficult for you just because you have certain requirements, whether they are medical, whether they are religious, whether they are just things you choose to eat or not to eat. That shouldn't be a difficult process. And that's really what the drive behind Allergy is, because I just think it's not fair for people to be choosing their health and then they can't go to eat in all these places and they're made to feel awkward. Like that's not on to me.
Okay, and since you're sort of turned to a free from sort of life and being at the beginning of your free from journey, have you been able to engage with the community much? Like, I know from my experience how close knit a community it is and how supportive it is. Have you been able to sort of find the support and the recipes and stuff within the community the way I have, and probably many of the people watching at home have?
Yeah, one thing I find fascinating is that, particularly on Facebook, I think this period of coronavirus has shown something which I think people didn't realize, which is that technology, when used correctly, is an unbelievable force of positive change and impact. And I think prior to this, maybe people had this perception that technology was evil and these big tech companies were here to ruin the world. And that's just not the case. I mean, look what we're doing now with this virtual meeting. Look what you can do with Zoom now and all these things. And in terms of the community on Facebook particularly, it's phenomenal. Like, I posted about, there's a product called Lion's Mane, which is quite interesting. It's like a nootropic, I believe they call it, type of mushroom that is good for kind of mental agility and these type of things. And I heard about it, but I wasn't quite sure what the deal was with it. And then I can't tell you, there's like 60 comments and like all these people, like it was so much, it was overwhelming, the amount of advice that was given. And then there's a great website, I must say, I have no affiliation to, it's really cool. I think it's called examine.com. And it basically shows you all these like peer-reviewed research as to what's just actually true, what's marketing claim, what's, you know, actually happening, and across a whole plethora of different products. So that's worth looking into. But certainly, yeah, the community is amazing. And that's one of the reasons that I love working in this space, because people are so supportive. Like, I've worked in many different businesses in retail jewelry and luxury watches and all kind of different things. And there's not very few spaces where your competitors are complementary. And in fact, I view and they view a rising tide lifts all ships. So if there's other people doing what we're doing, that's cool. Let's all like make this easier globally. Like, you know, it's far easier to work together than it is to be, you know, try and look over your shoulder and doing that kind of thing, which I think happens in other industries. But in this one, I've got friends who make plant-based bars and all kind of different things. And it's a super inclusive place. And yeah, people are lovely. I've got to say, like, my experience, I've spoken to thousands of people in this space from all walks of life, marketers to restaurateurs to people with allergies and diets and all these different things. And yeah, like, it's overwhelming how amazingly positive and collaborative people are. And that's long to continue.
Awesome. It sort of sounds like you've got a relatively scientific approach to health. Would that be right? That's sort of how I feel about, by the sounds of it.
It's funny because science, like, I'm very academic, but science was something that never resonated with me. So I read a book just recently, which is worth looking into, called How Not to Die, right? I know it's a very morbid title, by Dr. Michael Greger. And it's very, very science heavy as to why a plant-based diet is the way to go. And it's all like, it's about 400 pages, and another 200 pages are purely just indexed journals, you know, references. It's crazy. And I was reading it and I was like, do you know what? I'm more of a person that goes, and this is probably the wrong turn of phrase, but I go off gut instincts an awful lot. So I don't really, I look at a packet of food, very simple. If I don't understand what's in that packet, I'm not eating it. It's that simple. It's not really scientific. It's just like, I just, if I don't understand what's in there, what these different things are, even if they are possibly healthy for you, and I've got to actually research all that, that's just too much effort for me personally. Like, I've got lots of other things going on. I want to be healthy, but like, I know that if I know the fundamental ingredients that go into what I'm eating is vegetables, fruits, you know, grains, all these different things, I'm fine with that. So I wouldn't say it's scientific. I'd say the nutrigenetics thing is a place that I'd like to go to that next level, understand. But I think you can get on a very slippery slope of then, again, you're not enjoying food. And then, you know, because let's not forget, one, I'm a Jewish guy, and a lot of the festivals are not particularly religious, but the cultural festivals all revolve around food. And particularly, again, in the UK, you know, we go out, we celebrate. A lot of the time we go and we have a meal. And so I think if you're just over sciencey, then you're going to miss out on a lot of those type of things. And I think that's maybe, for me, that's just not something I want to do. And again, it's that trade-off is, how do I eat out? And that's what why the app's so important to me. How do I make eating out easy, enjoyable, even if I've got certain requirements and restrictions of which I personally, need to adhere to.
And I guess that sort of brings us onto the app, because obviously this journey has taken you in a new direction, professionally as well as personally. And so what was the sort of the thing that kicked it all off and made you think I'd like to do something in my professional life as well as changing my personal habits, and where did that lead you with the Allergy app?
Yeah, certainly. So I think it's profoundly it's just amazing when you align your personal values with your professional values and what you're doing day to day. It's so much easier to put the right energy into it, and you attract the right sorts of people when the sole purpose is not simply, can I make a profit? Can I make this $1 billion company? Like, that would be awesome, but like, that's not the driver behind this. And I think it's very obvious people look at what we're doing. In terms of how it came to it, I did mention it earlier, but just to repeat so people understand, I just realized that I was lactose intolerant from a number of different tests. And then I figured out through a friend helped me out who's a celiac, said maybe take gluten out, see what happens, and that worked as well. And then I just figured out when I was, I ate in like I won't mention the restaurant, but a very high-end restaurant in Manchester. And this was only a few months ago, way after I'd come up with the idea, and I was working on it. And I said, oh, does this soup have cream in it? And like, I expected the waiter to know straight off the bat if it did or it didn't. Like, it's a high-end restaurant. Not a clue. And I'm in a business meeting for the first time, and it's super awkward because the fellow goes, oh, let me take everyone else's order and I'll come back to you. So I'm like, oh, brilliant. So I'm now like the awkward one, effectively. So then he comes back to me, he goes, oh, I don't know, let me go to the kitchen. Goes to the kitchen, there's a whole commotion, comes back with this little laminated, scrunched up piece of paper. And thankfully, I'm not really allergic to something, because it was really, as off these restaurants are, it's kind of dingy and dimly lit in there, which is like this cool new thing obviously we'll do. So you can't really see. He's not really sure. If I had a serious allergy, I'm not going to go on his advice based on what he's saying. And, I'm just like, you know what, something needs to be done about this. And as I say, that was I was already working on it, but it kind of cemented it for me also. But the originator, like anything that I've ever done in my life and will go on to do, is simply, hold on a minute, this is painful, this process is painful or dangerous in this case. Obviously, if you get this thing wrong, there's a fatality on your hands, and nobody wants that. And that's the ethos behind the company, is eating out easy, simple. And the product right now that we've got on the App Store, Apple App Store, and by the end of the month will be on the Google Play Store, is already getting incredible reviews. The diners are loving it. It's bear in mind, it's at day one, right? This is not the finished article, but it works. That's the key. And again, the restaurateurs are going, hold on a minute, like, this works. And like, I've decided for the rest of the year to help with the coronavirus situation that we're going to waive all our monthly fees for the restaurant. So it's always free to the diner, but restaurants pay to be on the platform. And we've waived all our fees because I believe that I want to help particularly the independent restaurants, because this will bring in people into restaurants that didn't realize they had the offering or the dish that would actually work for their particular requirement. So we've done that until Jan 2021, and we may extend it further. That's how much I actually care about what I'm doing, and it's not, how much can I make money quickly? Like, it's so not that, and it's such a joy to not have that stress, I would say.
Okay, cool. And this, I was going to ask another question, but it sort of brings me into the question from Dan Kelly from last week, because I'm doing a question train where everyone submits a question for the guest on the next week. And I was going to ask you a little bit about, how the app works. But Dan said, and interestingly, said he's noticed that there have been a few apps that he's seen before to do with allergies. So how is your app different from the others that are out there? That's the question from Daniel.
Yeah, sure. So as I said before, I'm not a person that's ever going to sit here and compare and contrast the other people doing similar things and say ours is better, ours is worth whatever. People download it, they make their own assessments. What I'd say is the team of people that is going to be announced in the next week or so that I've got around me is globally leading people. We're talking, you think of the biggest tech companies in the world, I've got the C-level suite on my board. And so the difference between us and everyone else, again, I'm not suggesting they're not doing a great job, is we're a global company. So we'll be like the Uber in this space, we'll be the Airbnb, the equivalent. That's where we're trying to go with this. And as I say, what's great is even from day one right now, the feedback and the sense of fulfillment for me of actually some of the reviews. I mean, one review, like someone genuinely, you can see this on the App Store, this is someone that I didn't know this person, no affiliation to, literally said that the app brought her to tears, that someone had taken the time and effort to make something to help the person's offspring out. It's the kids, I think, that have the issues. And like, it's that kind of thing that drives me. It's not the, don't get me wrong, as I say, yes, it will be nice for it to sustain itself and all the rest of it. And, you know, you can't have, in my opinion, a purpose-led business that doesn't make a profit, because I want to be able to give to charities. I want to be able to help out Allergy UK, and I want to be able to help out Coeliac UK. I know you've got Coeliac UK, you're to coming on afterwards. We're in talks with all these people because actually they're realizing that this is the time. So there have been people in the past that have tried this, but a lot of things about timing. And of course, it's about nowadays people use their phones all the time, whereas 5-10 years ago, people tried this and people didn't use phones so much, and it wasn't quite the done thing. So timing's a big thing. But as I say, if you just look, we're one of the only pure play players. What I mean by that is this is all that we do. We don't do like consultancy. We don't do all these other businesses. This is our main focus. And I think what people see from this coronavirus period, where a lot of people have been, you know, down tooling, you know, I could have easily said to my business and gone, hold on a minute, restaurants are closing. Let's just wait 3 months. But in actual fact, I stepped on the gas, did the total opposite, and went, hold on a minute. Restaurateurs are going to be, once they've furthered their staff and once they have got hopefully some grants to see them through, they'll be looking for something. How can we put our business in a better position on the other side of this? And also, of course, the independent restaurateur and the C-level restaurateur, you know, the bigger companies, they're not working in the restaurant that they were, or they're not traveling to meetings, so they've got time in their hands. And so counterintuitively, this has been a really strong period for us. And we've seen restaurants all over the country and users all over the world asking for when's this going to be in Australia, when's it going to be in Poland, when's it going to be in the States. And it's amazing. So
I'll be interested to see how it develops. So I guess that it's going to obviously you're very passionate about it. You've put a lot of time, effort, money, all that sort of stuff into it. And as long as I guess the next stage that lots of restaurants get on board with it, then yeah, that's what we'll be looking out for and interested to see, I guess.
Yeah, and that's why I'd say to Dan's question is that, you know, as much as I love talking, and you probably realize this, like I will let the app and what we're doing will speak volumes, because as I say, just look at the reviews that we've already got. We're nominated for Innovation of the Year at Europe's Most Prestigious Restaurant Show. And that was after 4 weeks being on the App Store. So like cool. we're in a different category to, I say, I'm not trying to criticize the competitors at all, but we're a global business, and that's the way that we're playing this. We're not playing this to just win the UK space and help people here. This is an issue globally, and of course that helps people when they're traveling, because if you go to France and you're from the UK, you want this app to be able to work in France and Italy and Japan and all different places. So that's the key for us, is really having a global reach. So as I say, watch this space, and please have a look at it and tell me what you think. And I'm all ears. I love feedback, even if it's critical, you don't like something, that's great. I really want to know what we can do better, because you, the listeners, the viewers, you're the people that are leading this business. It's not me. It's not my business. It's your business. Okay,
cool. Well, I'm going to need to wrap things up. I'm going to get Emily into the studio in a sec. There's one more thing or a couple of things I just want to quickly cover. A lot of people in the sort of allergy world, you know, we talked a little bit about intolerances and stuff like that. But for those parents of people with severe allergies, where a decision to sort of to trust an app or something like that could be life or death for some part of their family, where can they go to read a bit more about your app and understand a little bit more about how it works, rather than going into the ins and outs today? Is there somewhere that people can go to read a little bit more and understand why they can trust the app to make those sort of help and make those life-changing decisions, really?
Yeah, 100%. So the website's a good place to go, which is Allergy, allergi.co.uk. And again, you can find the app in the App Store. And in terms of from a trust level, that's obviously paramount to what we're doing. So the restaurants are supplying us with their information. That's the key. So there is no difference to the piece of paper you'd get in the restaurant, or indeed what you'd find online. The difference is that we tailor the menu based on your requirements. So we take away the need to go on the grid and do all that kind of searching. It's really paramount, and I want to get this really, really clear. I don't care who the competitor or who it is. No technology ever will be a replacement for telling your server that you have a severe allergy, a nut allergy, or intolerance. There's never a replacement, and we are not a replacement for that. So please do not think that's what this is. What we are a guide or a tool to assist you. So rather than you having to call up a restaurant before you go, you're researching, or if you're in the restaurant, you can look at and speak to the server about 2 or 3 items rather than 20 or 30. And as I say, that's really key, because even if our data is 100% accurate, which it is, we cannot ever know how that kitchen exactly on that day, the chef might have just prepared some with nuts and he's not washed his hands. Well, that's the restaurant's responsibility. So as I say, we go as far as we can to help you, but really you as the parent, or indeed the person with the allergy intolerance, need to at all times be explained to the server, it's great, this is nut free, but I have a severe nut allergy. Make sure the kitchen know that, and then the kitchen will put the proper processes and protocols in place. That's so important to get across.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that, mate. That's really, really important. And really, really great advice. Thank you. Have you got a question for James Wythe, Healthy Living James, for next week, so we can keep our question train going?
You know what? I didn't know you were going to ask me that live, so I didn't actually. I suppose, off the bat, I know a lot about this fellow, but I would say, how does he how does he define the word health? And indeed, in a world where there's so many conflicting diets, how does someone decipher that and figure out what's right for them? That's what I'd say.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay, right. Thanks a lot for that, mate. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us today. And lots to talk about. I'm sure everyone's going to be really interested to follow your journey, both professionally and personally, as you sort of learn more about freefrom and where you're going to go with that. So thanks so much, mate. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Cheers. Okay, right. Thanks to Charles. Now we're going to introduce to the virtual studio from Coeliac UK, Head of Food Policy at Coeliac UK, Emily Hampton.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing? Thanks so much for taking the time to come and chat today.
No, not a problem. My pleasure.
Now, interestingly, it sort of moves on a little bit from stuff that we were saying with Charles. There could be a lot of people maybe in the first steps of their journey to in freefrom, a recent diagnosis, something like that. Would it be possible for you to maybe tell us a little bit about Coeliac UK and maybe your role specifically within the organisation?
Yeah, of course. So Coeliac UK, so we're the national charity who support people with celiac disease and other gluten-related disorders live without gluten. And we've been doing that for 50 years now, so quite a long time. Some of the things that we do to kind of support people that need to live without gluten, we fund critical research to grow our knowledge base and find out more and more about celiac disease and gluten. We work really closely with our healthcare professionals just to understand more about how they recognise celiac disease and up the diagnosis rate as well. We work really closely with the food industry because there's that really close link with the diet. So it's all about safety and choice and availability. That's kind of the angle that we come at for it. And of course, we work sort of with government and policymakers as well to make sure that that legislation is in place to keep everyone safe. And my role, so I work within the food area, so head of food policy. So I help provide the charity with information within the food realm, sort of develop the evidence base in the area of the gluten-free diet.
Okay, so I guess people that have been recently diagnosed with gluten sensitivity or celiac, it's a good place for them to start is with you guys, right?
Absolutely. We've got so much information. We've got expert information. That's sort of where we come from, making sure that everything is evidence-based. We've got such great contacts from healthcare professionals that provide us with such expert information, as well as our research connections as well. So if you go on our website, we've got so much information for people to access. So yeah, I would really encourage, if you are newly diagnosed, and we know that the NHS is under quite a lot of pressure at the moment, so you might not be able to sort of get to your your appointments that you would have been able to. Perhaps you're struggling to get your referral to dietitian appointments. We've got some really useful tools on our website that you can refer to if you are in those early stages. Especially we've got dietitians on our helpline, so do give us a call if you do have questions and you are newly diagnosed. I'm sure we can help you out.
That's really good advice, and interesting about the helpline. I didn't realize that you can actually get through and you can speak to someone. That's so cool, and it's like the immediacy of being able to speak to someone. That sounds really, really cool.
Absolutely.
So I know that a lot of charities and organisations, they'll have different goals or missions at different points, and that'll change over time. So specifically, what are Coeliac UK? What are their sort of goals and missions at the moment?
So at the moment, our goals will always be the same, which is to support people live without gluten. You know, the focus at the moment, obviously, is coronavirus, and we've spent the past couple of months reacting and trying to find out and answer all of the questions that our community has had about, you know, people with celiac disease. It's an autoimmune condition. They might be slightly more worried about their risk. There is no research. Obviously, we don't know anything about coronavirus properly. No one knows much about it in terms of, you know, how it affects us. So we can't give evidence-based advice from that perspective, but we have been in contact with all of our healthcare network to find out, you know, comparing the government advice to our patient community to see, you know, what advice we can give. So it's always going to those experts. So we have been sort of linking everyone up through our food networks, because at the beginning of the pandemic, we know that people were really struggling to access food supplies. There was a bit of panic buying going on, I think.
Yeah.
So we were doing our best to try and support from all angles, especially those that were self-isolating and really struggling to get hold of gluten-free products specifically. So yeah, our goal is always to reach as many people as possible. So we're constantly trying to expand our networks and just make sure we're supporting our community as best we can.
Cool, and that sort of takes me on to my next question, really. Have you noticed like a massive change in the nature of engagement with the community since lockdown has started? Has that sort of, although your goals and missions are the same, your day-to-day has changed quite a lot during lockdown and the way you communicate and interact?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when more people are at home as well, and it's connecting people up virtually, and we're obviously always on the other end of the phone, people are using social media platforms, so we're always there to answer all the questions. I think you know, every business will have seen the same, every charity will have seen the same. We've been on a sort of journey over the past couple of months. So the beginning was a bit more unknown, and it was more about food availability and understanding more about the virus, and, you know, are people with celiac disease or gluten related disorders more at risk? Do they need to protect themselves? So those were sort of the early questions we were trying to help and support with, using our networks and, you know, our resources. And I think it's sort of settled down in terms of food supplies, settled down definitely. We actually did a survey recently to try and understand, you know, what were the issues that our community were facing, and the best way to get that information is to go direct to people. And we had an amazing response. So we got over 3,000 responses in, I think it was about 2 weeks we had it up for. So we were able to really capture some information about where the issues were in terms of food supply, which we've been able to feed into government discussions and policymakers so that they can really understand what our community are struggling with. So that was really useful.
Was it what you expected? Was what you found out from those surveys? Was there anything that sort of came out of that was surprising to you, or sort of changed the way that you guys might be supporting at that time?
Yeah, I don't think any of it was surprising, because, you know, we're always keeping up to date with what's going on. So it was difficulties getting those online delivery slots, which I think the whole country was having, especially those that might have other conditions other than celiac disease, because sometimes they go hand in hand, who were in the more vulnerable category and required to definitely stay at home and weren't able to access those online delivery slots, which was definitely a theme in the responses that we got back. And then there were certain products that people were struggling to get hold of more than others. But it's so pasta and flour, but that did obviously also expand over to the gluten variety of those as well. So it wasn't just the gluten free. So we did actually, I think something that we did that was really important was we did a social media sort of raised awareness that if you are going shopping, it was really important to leave that, you know, if you don't normally buy gluten free, but you're desperate for pasta, please try and leave it for those that need it, because there's there's less on the shelves anyway. So we did try and encourage people. Hopefully people listened.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah.
Have you noticed like a difference in different parts of the country during lockdown and stuff? Have you had more people reaching out from sort of rural areas or living in isolated places compared to people living in cities?
It's definitely more difficult to get if you're more reliant on your delivery slots. If you're in a more rural area, that was definitely harder for people to get access to those slots. I would say the issues were pretty much sort of across the country, so the same issues in terms of accessibility to food. It kind of was the same wherever you went. So whether you're in the south or the north of England, same issues. But as I said, the supply chain looks to have settled down a bit, so hopefully people are able to get their gluten-free products again.
That's really good to hear. It's good to hear that although things were difficult, we're sort of in a situation where there's a much more sort of positive situation now, with people being able to access those, and the supply lines are getting back to where they should be.
Absolutely. And I haven't mentioned, so everything that we've been doing, we've created a coronavirus hub on our website. So it's got lots of useful information, sort of tips and tricks. We've got a page on there connecting people to our food network. So lots of the people that we talk to have been so good at kind of finding other ways to get products to people. So whether that's through direct delivery or takeaway. So do have a look. If you do need gluten-free food, have a look on there. And we've tried to connect you up in as many ways as possible.
Cool, brilliant, thank you. What are you doing in the immediate future, and maybe the sort of medium long term future at Coeliac UK? Have you got anything interesting coming up that you want to share with us?
Lots of things, always. I think sort of the main thing we're trying to do is reach as many people as we can and improve our services in the best way we can. So I think this whole environment's just shown us how reliant people are on the internet and immediate access. So interestingly, we went live with a digital membership just before Christmas. So I think people that have really benefited from that, that have been able to access information and resources, and if you are newly diagnosed, you might not know how to quite navigate the diet quite yet. So that digital platform it was really popular when we launched it. So I think that's been really useful. So we're always trying to improve the way people access information. So that's something we will continue to work on. We're always looking into the research, seeing what's coming up, how that's changing, understanding celiac disease and gluten more. So we're always keeping a really keen eye on that. And then growing our partnerships. Obviously, you've had Charles on, and he said, he's speaking to lots of people. We're always speaking to lots of people to see how, we can connect people. It's so important to work with, experts in other areas. We're the experts in celiac disease, but we can join up with lots of other areas and, make life easier for people that need to live without gluten. So whichever way that is, we will continue to explore for sure.
Brilliant. And just going to finish off by asking, if you could give one piece of advice to someone recently diagnosed with celiac disease, what would that be?
One piece. Gosh, there's so many. I think my one piece would be knowledge is really powerful. So, you might, when you're first diagnosed, you might have never even have heard of celiac disease or what it is or what it does. So for you to be healthy and, you've probably not been feeling very well. up until the point of your diagnosis, and it might have come as quite a shock. You might find it very overwhelming having to take on this whole new diet and not fully understanding it. So definitely educate yourself. As I said, we've got so much information on our website. You're going to need to know, what to look for on a food label. You're going to need to know what to ask in a restaurant to keep yourself safe. So I would say my number one piece of advice is educate yourself about the condition and how to keep yourself safe. But I would also caveat that with, speak to your friends and family as well, because it can feel so overwhelming for yourself, and you're taking this journey and you're changing the way you eat and live and socialize. And it's really important that your friends and family understand that too, so that they can, understand what you're having to do when you go out and have to eat. So yeah, that would be my advice. But it's not as scary as you think it is, and it's all a learning curve, and you'll be an expert in no time. Just take some practice.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that, and thanks for coming in and taking the time to chat to us virtually today.
No problem at all.
No worries. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up now. Say thank you to both of our guests for coming in and chatting to me today. It's been great to have so much engagement from the community and so many different people willing to give up their time and help out in their own specific way. So thank you to Charles and Emily. Don't forget, you can get your tickets for our autumn shows in Birmingham and London in the video description. Tickets are, of course, free, so get registered today. Next week, we have two of the most prominent bloggers in the free-from world. We have My Gluten-Free Guide, Laura Strange, and James Wythe, also known as Healthy Living James. I know they're both going to have plenty of brilliant advice, so make sure you tune in at 3:30 on Friday. In the meantime, don't forget to nominate your AFF Chat Champions of the Week and get your questions in for future guests through our social media channels or email through info@f2fevents.co.uk. So that's it for another week. Until next Friday, stay safe, free-fromers. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.